Hello and welcome to the Yggdrasil podcast. I am your host, Ratatosker. Today we have NintendoBlackCrisis and TriforceTrends. Welcome, fellas.
Hello.
Hello.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, I am so honored that I am on the podcast with the Zonai guy right after a gameplay reveal that actually showed the Zonai. That's crazy. That's cool.
Congratulations.
Moving on.
Congratulations, Black Crisis, on the Zonai thing.
Ah, yes, thank you.
Actually,
I feel like it was a group effort, though. You know, all of us contributing to the Zonai theories.
were you the first guy to make a video on the Zonai?
Technically, no. So obviously, almost no one really talked about it at the very beginning because the ruins were there, the structures were there, but it was obviously Breath of the Wild doesn't have too much of a story emphasis, and even then, there's no mention at all of them. So I believe one of the first people to actually make a theory video on it was Laurulian Historian. His YouTube's also TGL Medora, and he made a shorter video talking about the mazes and the word Zonai, and I believe he went a bit into what was said on creating a champion. And aside from that, I think Zeltic had also briefly mentioned them in one of his Unsolved Mysteries series of videos. And I knew a bit about them, but I believe that most of my interest was after that sequel trailer, because I was like, hold on, that pillar is the exact same as the one in Pharaon Ruins. And then it's like, whoa, what's that? Is that a stylized owl and dragon carved into the wall? It's not the exact same, but those two are two of the three motifs for the Triforce for the Zonai, according to creating a champion. So,
And TriforceTrends, how long have you been on the Zonai train, on the Zonai boat?
The Zonai boat. I don't know. I think honestly, I was the Zonai denier right up until E3 2021. For some reason, the symbol on the back of the shield, for some reason, it screamed Zonai to me, and that was my only piece of evidence. It made no sense whatsoever. I went back and watched. I went back and watched all of NBC's videos on it, and I think at the time there was only the 45-minute one, the first part.
yeah.
And it was a great video. And then I think that video in the end was the thing that got me on the train. And then it's been up and up from there. And I'm more on, obviously I'm more on the Zonai train now more than ever. But it came from your videos basically initially.
It's kind of nice that it's now confirmed in the text, because I feel like I can kind of shift my excitement discussion a bit away from that and focus more on the gameplay, which, by the way, gameplay looks incredible, and that definitely was my favorite part. And I feel like that was most people's favorite part, because it's nice to have the word Zonai, but now that we know that they will have some involvement, it's okay, we can talk a bit about other things.
Yeah, rest easy.
Yeah.
Still, it probably feels really good to be so completely vindicated. On with on screen, the word Zonai is right there. It's oh, clearly he was right all along. Because I've made theories in, I haven't made any Zelda theories yet. I do have one in the works, but I've made theories in the Dark Souls and Elden Ring space. And because of the nature of Dark Souls and Elden Ring, there's never going to be a confirmation for my theories. There's never a developer thing or the for the most part, it's not the kind of theories that you could confirm. So it just must feel amazing, because you had a lot of deniers. There were a lot of Zonai deniers just a day before the gameplay reveal. You had people on there just viscerally attacking. No, it's a completely YouTuber made up theory. There's no such thing as the Zonai. It was actually incredible.
The thing that I guess it's just the mindset that some of they're very strongly denying some of these people. I think it's completely fine if throughout this you were oh, I kind of disagree with that. I don't think the Zonai are going to have really any sort of involvement, which I think that was completely fine. It's just, it was the people who were oh, it's ridiculous to think that they could have any sort of, influence on Tears of the Kingdom. But it's however, in the first trailer, the exact same pillars appear underground, and we have other Zonai-esque architecture, and the walls have an owl and dragon. And that's really the only set of people that kind of get to me, because I think it's completely fine to, throughout this whole journey to disagree with it. It's just, saying it's ridiculous and there was nothing at all. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
especially
it does feel good. Yeah.
Yeah, it linked back to, like, I don't know, it depends how far you go in the rabbit hole, but it really does link back to the last couple of games, and definitely Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword more so. But then also Breath of the Wild with, like, even the first piece of marketing for Breath of the Wild. I mean, obviously, E3 2014 with, like, I think it was the owl statue head. And then to see it in Tears of the Kingdom as well, or the Breath of the Wild 2 trailer at the time, I don't know, to me, it wasn't enough back then, but nowadays, if I look back at it retrospectively, it was definitely enough to go, okay, so they wanted to do the Zonai in the last game, they decided to bail on it sometime in production, and then they've gone, okay, but we can do the Zonai this time, because why not? It's a sequel.
Yeah, in hindsight,
Yeah,
a lot of
hindsight's a
people
funny
will
thing.
be like, oh, yeah, no, now, like, I see, it's so funny now, though, like, when I see some of the area, videos and in the comments, of when people are getting excited, and they're like, a lot of people now are like, oh, wasn't it obvious? And it's like, there were a lot of people denying.
Yeah.
But it's just a hindsight thing. And like, even with all as far as I went, especially with like the second part of the whole series, where like I had emphasized at the beginning, first part was more about what's found in Breath of the Wild. Second part is going to be a lot more speculative, because we're going to try and open it up to other games.
Mm-hmm.
All of that can be wrong. And because I don't want to, I make those ideas with like the foresight of like, yeah, this could be incorrect. It's still fun to like go over as many possibilities as, you can. It's just the fact though that they are definitely going to have an involvement, given what we've seen. That's enough for me to look at this and be like, you know what? It could be incorrect, but it was worth it.
Yeah, the journey was worth it in the end.
Exactly.
And I think that's the best thing. That's the best thing about the Zonai at the minute, and the fact that it's cool. It's cool.
Yeah.
For me, I kind of got gaslit by the community, because like my initial reaction when I came into making videos for Tears of the Kingdom, and I'm looking around at what other people are saying, it just seemed obvious to me that the Zonai were a thing. But then I would go online. I'd go to the Tears of the Kingdom subreddit or just anywhere where this kind of discussion was happening, and I'd look at forums, and there were so many people so viciously upset about the idea of the Zonai being real, and vigorously defensive whenever you brought it up, that I was like, okay, it's like, this is a landmine. Why is this such a landmine? It seems obvious. Why are so many people disagreeing, that I gaslit myself into not making a video? I was going to do a little recap before this latest thing was going to do. I was going to do is like, okay, let me showcase, first of all, what's in creating a champion. What did all these other people think? All the other YouTubers think? What are all the existing theories? What do I think is most likely? I think that would have been a good video, but the community reaction kind of like shied me away. I deeply regret that. Never listening to these people again.
I think some of it is the like, bitterness and anger. It doesn't come from the fact that these guys want them to like not be in the game. I think a lot of it is just the fact that like, especially in that first year since we had known about the sequel, there were so many videos on the Zonai, and I think that's the main reason why people got pretty agitated about it, because like there are some really good ones, and then there are some where like they aren't so good, but everyone was talking about the Zonai, and I think people were probably just sick of it for the most part. Even the people who are like, oh, it's ridiculous to think that they'll be involved at all, I think a lot of that just came from the fact that they were sick of seeing, every single day a new Zonai video dropping.
I do think that's probably it. It probably is that, plus just the slew of videos that happened during that time period, because we really had nothing. Like, we had nothing to go on. We were starving. Um, but and then the types of theories that we were getting out of the community was stuff like um, the I guess the the Vati is going to make a return from
Oh yeah.
the Minish Cap. The Sky people are actually the Minish that went up into the sky. There's patterns on the ground in the Minish Cap, all kinds of stuff like that. Ganondorf is Link. Uh, all kinds of weird stuff, and it's great. It's fine because I can tell that a lot of that's just speculative, and probably the YouTuber it's himself that made those kinds of videos. It's just like, look, we have no content. Let's find some cool connections. But because there was nothing else, and this was like the main type of video that was happening in the community at the time, I could see why any kind of lore theory would be tiresome to the community.
Yeah, the thing that got me to make those massive, documentary styled videos in the Zonai is because I was like, I want to just put it all in one big cohesive project, so that I'm not spamming my subscribers with like 10 different videos. So like that's what led to the whole like Zonai series, the part 1 that was 45 minutes, the part 2 that was like 85 minutes, or I've forgotten. But like I did that so it would feel less spammy. And I think it was much better than just like getting a bunch of videos out.
No, I agree. I watched your Zonai video, at least one of the hour-long ones. That was great.
Honestly, I consider that. I feel like people don't really need to watch the first one, to be completely honest, because I do a pretty good job of recapping a lot of that stuff in the second part. And I guess part 2 was more of the idea I had when I was first working on part 1.
Yeah, because I guess you wanted to talk about like really what you wanted to do at that point, especially right after Breath of the Wild 2 at the time was revealed. You want to talk about the next game, but first you kind of have to recap everything to do with the Zonai. You have to give people the info so that you can do the speculation content, if that makes sense.
That's the hard part, because
Yeah.
when you, even for like a Let's Play video these days, you don't want to advertise it as like part 2, part 3, part 4.
Yeah.
Because then obviously as you go further, less people watch, and usually the most watched videos are the first episode and the finale of whatever Let's Play they're doing.
Right.
So technically, while this was a part 2, I advertised the second one as like a separate video, and I also just have to assume that, okay, people probably are going to see this that didn't watch the first one, so you're kind of forced to do a bit of a recap.
Yeah,
And
that makes sense.
and also I think it was just because I was stressed out when starting the whole series with part 1 that I decided to like split it up, because originally it was supposed to be just one part, but then I just covered Breath of the Wild exclusive stuff and creating a champion exclusive stuff in part 1, then later did the more, the whole timeline. But as I said, with the second project, it ended up kind of being just like one big video. So
Well, I want to get back to the Zonai actually, but before that, let me just go ahead and do my normal questions for you two. First of all, TriforceTrends, what was your first Zelda game, and which one is your favorite?
Well, I went back and listened to the one that you did with Hyrule Gamer a little while back, and I've got the exact same answer as him. I have absolutely no clue, so I go back and forth on this all the time. But I'm fairly certain, because people are always like, because my favorite Zelda game, I know you're gonna ask this, so I'll get it out quickly. My favorite Zelda game is Twilight Princess, and people love to say the first Zelda game that you play is normally the one that you like the most. I disagree. But the problem is, then I have to try and disprove it by saying which other game I played. I think my first game was Ocarina of Time 3D. I'm a newer fan, but I might talk about that later.
Okay.
But yeah, Ocarina of Time 3D, and I played some Majora's Mask on the N64 when I was really small.
I really don't like Majora's Mask 3D, but we can get we can get to we can get to that. I don't even like Ocarina of Time 3D that much, but that's I don't.
You don't like remasters, right?
I don't like remasters. I'm
Yeah.
famous for not liking remasters. There's just I think Majora's Mask 3D is like the best example in the world actually of the developers not being the same people they were, 20 years ago. They're not the same people. They're not the same artists that they were 10 years ago. And so they sometimes don't know what made their games good. Like they don't understand what they did that made the game good in the first place. So Majora's Mask is an easy one. It's a controversial one. But even little things like changes in the colors, the brightness, the textures, I don't like them because for me the purpose of a remake or a remaster is so that you can take a thing and introduce it to a modern audience, introduce it to people that didn't have the opportunity to enjoy it. And so if you're modernizing it, you have to do it in a way that's trying to keep as much of the original as possible, because you don't actually know what combination of minute elements made the strong impression that the original had. Like Ocarina of Time has such a it's a huge number of Zelda fans' favorite Zelda game. So you don't know if it was the color of the tunic that Link had that was doing it. So if you're going to modernize the tunic, yeah, modernize everything. I want it introduced to a new generation of people, but be really careful. Really try to understand what you did the first time. That's why I like the Metroid Prime remaster so much.
Oh yeah,
Perfect.
that's a great remaster.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
I literally have never liked the remaster as much as I do the Metroid Prime one.
Great remaster. That is a great game. We won't talk about it, but it is a fantastic game.
But yeah, Nintendo Black Crisis. Which one was your first Zelda game, and which one's your favorite?
So, technically speaking, the first one I had ever tried was the original Majora's Mask, which is probably the worst first Zelda game you could play to introduce yourself into the series because of the whole time limit. It really stresses you out. I know some people will, disagree. Oh no, it's great to start off, but I feel like you could say that with every game. Technically, there is always going to be a group of people who feel like that's a great starting point. But
I'm
even
those
the
people.
Even the simplest, most obvious puzzles I'd get stuck on. But it's just because when you have a time limit in any game, you start to freak out and you start to not think. You're like, oh no, I'm running out of time. What am I going to do? So I didn't get past the Woodland Temple. Is that the first one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I couldn't get past that one, so I had stopped playing. But it's the same as TriforceTrends. My first one was Ocarina of Time 3D, and I loved it. I personally love it. And that got me into the series. I wasn't necessarily like a major Zelda fan. Honestly, after the success from Breath of the Wild, when I went to play some other games to get more interested in the lore, that's when I really became a fan of the series. But some of the games I had played prior to Breath of the Wild were Wind Waker, though I stopped at the dumb Triforce chart quest thing.
Yeah.
I was surprised to hear a lot of people didn't like because the art style, because that was one of those games where I saw it and I'm like, okay, I want to play this someday, because I loved the even the GameCube one, which some people argue they prefer the GameCube over the
I do.
over the HD one. And then I played Twilight Princess and A Link Between Worlds. Now my favorites are divided between three. It has to be Wind Waker HD, Majora's Mask, or A Link Between Worlds, because I love A Link Between Worlds. I feel like it's so underrated.
No, it's a great game, but not Breath
It's
of the Wild.
No, actually,
Not even
I
in the
know.
top three.
Bit of a spicy take. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like Tears of the Kingdom might get that top three spot.
Yeah.
But I probably would put Breath of the Wild a bit down there. I'm someone who, when someone asks me what my favorite game is, I can never choose. It's always like, oh, well, here's like three that I really like, I can never choose one definitive favorite game. They all have things that I love.
I like that you mentioned Wind Waker's art style, because like that one really retroactively became a darling in the community. Like at the time, it was criticized, and even Nintendo didn't think that it did well. But retroactively, people just love Wind Waker. I even like Wind Waker HD. I just wish there wasn't so much bloom and it was a little less bright. That's it. That's my only problem.
I can see that problem, though. To be fair, I can see your point there.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks.
It's kind of like Pokemon Black and White version. A lot of people didn't like it when it came out. I loved it when it came out, and then these days I see
it's grown into a titan.
These days I see people mention. I saw people mention that like it wasn't really received very well back then, and then I see so many comments like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah,
it feels like it's exactly like Wind Waker.
Yeah,
because when you say that to people on Twitter about Wind Waker, how people didn't like it, people are like, "Wait, what? People didn't like Wind Waker?" It's just a thing.
So I'm interested in that Breath of the Wild isn't in your top, not even in the top 3 games. Top 4? Would it be top 4?
I don't know. Again, I it's hard for me to choose like a favorite because I love Ocarina of Time 3D.
Because I'm often pigeonholed because of the nature of my content into being a Breath of the Wild hater, even though I'm clearly not. And I keep telling people it's my second favorite in the series. But here we have NintendoBlackCrisis, now famous on the internet for being a Breath of the Wild hater. It's not even in the top 4.
Well, that's the awkward part about having the channel grow off Breath of the Wild, because in terms of talking about it obviously it's one of my favorite games to talk about.
Right.
Because there are a lot of discussion points, but it also, you can't really correlate that to like, oh, it must be your favorite, because at this point, all the other Zelda games, they've already gone through their cycle. They've been talked about. Most of their stuff has been discussed. It's hard. I wish I could talk more, come up with more theories about past games, but
Right.
it's just really difficult because they've already been, looked at with a magnifying glass.
Right.
So,
Plus, those past games are often referenced in Breath of the Wild. So sometimes when you're talking about Breath of the Wild, you're indirectly talking about a lot of the stuff that came before.
right. Yeah. But I have a feeling like the only concern I have now is that Hyrule Surface will feel too similar, but I have a feeling they probably are purposely hiding a ton of changes to Hyrule
Right.
Surface.
Right.
So if that's a thing and it feels fresh, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Tears of the Kingdom will be like a top 3.
I want to get to that later on, but I don't want to like touch on that right away.
Yeah. But like the reason I love Majora's Mask so much is because it is limited to that 3-day cycle, but it's fleshed out so well.
Right.
There are specific schedules for like each day, and they're different for some of the NPCs, and certain like quests. You have to have like some prerequisites. Like you might have one where you have to save the old woman that's carrying that bomb bag, and just it makes the side quests so good, and that's why I feel like that's why it's in my top 3, especially just like how well they incorporate those dark elements. A Link Between Worlds. It's a very easy game, but it's a game where like I could go back and just play it again, and it's so casual and it's so fun.
I'm not sure A Link Between Worlds is that easy compared to modern game standards. It's still it's the easiest 2D Zelda game. I guess it's not really a 2D Zelda game, but it's in the 2D style of Zelda game. But I think it's way harder than a lot of the stuff people are used to today. I went back to it, and while it's not a Link to the Past, it's definitely not a Link to the Past. I went back and I played Link to the Past. That shit is brutal. That stuff is hard.
Really is. That stuff there's I haven't still finished A Link to the Past. I was trying to like play it once, and I got to a room and there's just enemies everywhere. And then when I see tutorials, it's like, oh yeah, they got this medallion to use it to kill all the enemies in the room. And I'm thinking, kind of sucks that it feels like I need that in order to get past this one room. Because it was at a time where it's like, oh, more enemies in the room equals difficulty. I guess it also is how you play the game, because, there's that like hero mode.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you play it with the hero mode, it is difficult. I did beat it once with hero mode.
There's a hero mode in
And
A
I-
Link to the Past?
No, sorry, A Link Between Worlds.
Right.
And yeah, that I guess that does make it pretty difficult when you consider the hero modes, because it does like ×4 damage. I guess when I say easier, it's like the dungeons are really quick.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
they're so quick.
They're so bite-sized.
Yeah, but it's just so fun to go through it, and I think it has the best collectible in a game because it's very fair with its system. Like when you're close by, you can hear it.
The shells?
Maiais that you
Oh
collect.
yeah, the shells. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Skulltulas were a pain in Ocarina of Time because when I first played, I didn't know that it was like, oh, some only spawn at night. That's nice. So I was like, oh, great. I have like 50. It looks like I got them all. I feel good. Wait, what's that? Oh, there's 100. Oh. Yeah.
I like A Link Between Worlds because it's well, first of all, it's connected to A Link Past, and I just love Yuga. I love
Yuga is great.
Oh,
He's
yeah,
so underrated.
So great.
I love his theme. Yuga.
Yeah, he should really. I love his theme so much. He should really be up there with Girahim and Zant. If people are comparing him to villain, he should be as rated as them.
True, the weirdo characters. We
Yeah.
love those.
And he's also kind of like a fan fiction like dream character because like
Yeah.
he like possesses Ganondorf's body, and so he's Yuga and Ganondorf and has the Triforce. It's like the kind of fan fictions where they get all the cool stuff in the game and give it to one character.
Well, normally, like in these cases, you realize in the end that Ganondorf or Ganon was the one using them, but he just straight up merges with Ganon, and it seems like it's still Yuga.
Yeah.
So like he was able to just use Ganon and not have like be controlled by him in the end.
Yeah.
It's funny because I feel like there hasn't really been too many villains, like side villains, that are underwhelming. I mean, I guess Bellum sort of, he's way less talked about, but I still think he's a pretty interesting villain. But like Avati, Girahim,
Right.
Zant. The game has so many amazing side villains, and I think that's another reason why people just really want to see some of them reappear in Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah.
Because that would be so cool. I don't think it would happen, but like if that was a secret that was being held from us, that everyone would go nuts.
They'd lose their shit. They'd lose their shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even Vati, like Vati was a fantastic villain in his game in Minish Cap. Like he was okay in his other games that he appeared in, but in Minish Cap, like I didn't realize. I played Minish Cap as a kid. I played all of these as a kid, honestly. But I played Minish Cap, and I didn't realize the sword was the Force Sword. I didn't understand. I didn't get that. Like, I had never played Force Sword, but I knew about it. I knew what it was, and I knew what Vati looked like in Force Sword. So I played Minish Cap, and then at the very end, when you like get into 4 different links and control all of them at the same time, and then Vati progressively looks more like his counterpart, and he was difficult. He was actually really hard.
So hard.
He killed me several times. I'm like, am I playing a Zelda game? How am I dying?
Dude, the dark nuts before the fight as well. I always had so many problems with those dark nuts. It used to send me crazy.
The fact that there is like a game over as well. Because
Oh,
when I
yeah.
first played, I was doing a live stream of it, and I was like, oh, so I just straight up lost. Cool. Yeah, that fight is pretty difficult though. It's kind of like a lot of enemies in the series where, unless you know like a very specific strategy,
Right.
You do not
true.
know how to like. 'Cause recently I played through Twilight Princess HD, and I was doing the Cave of Ordeals with those dark nuts, and like prior to that, at the Temple of Time, I took forever. I was constantly getting hit, but then when I saw a video to how to get through it, it was like, oh yeah, just do like one jump attack, and then do a couple normal attacks, and then he'll be stunned and you can hit him. And then I did that, and it was just consistently it worked, and I'm like, oh wow, yeah. So if you just kind of know these little strategies, it becomes super easy. But for someone who's never played before, yeah, those
Right.
those fights can be really really brutal.
Okay, so we spent a lot of time on the past games. Just let's talk a little bit more about the Zonai. Let's talk about some speculation based on what we saw. Do you guys think that the Zonai as a people will be present in the game? And if you do, where do you think we'll meet them? In the Sky Islands?
I'll let the Zonai guy speak first.
I mean, I guess we still don't know the identity of the figure on the mural. At the most, I don't think those robots are like the Zonai.
They'll be present.
I think it's a case like those robots are similar to Skyward Sword's, ancient robots. So maybe the Zonai were the ones who built them.
Right.
I still believe that we will have maybe like a separate sky realm and there's more sky islands there, given how there may be connections to the sacred realm. We still don't know anything about the Triforce.
Right.
And, there's
Sure.
that realm the dragons go to the end of the days.
Okay, so
and we have a new dragon.
Yeah, yeah.
So
are we thinking that? Okay, so are we thinking there's going to be? Are you a subscriber to there's some kind of alternate world being hidden away from us? So either the sacred realm, some kind of dark world.
I think it might be like a sky realm, and maybe there we will see the actual Zonai. But the sky islands that we see at the moment, they are pretty abandoned, and we have areas where close to that altar there's the constructs that are broken down,
destroyed. Yeah.
So something went on there. It's just really hard to.
Okay, what about you?
That, I guess.
TriforceTrends.
Well, I'm definitely in the camp that think the constructs have been built by the Zonai. In my opinion, they definitely aren't the Zonai. I've actually done a little bit of digging. This is such a shameless plug after barely speaking so far, but I've literally got a video on it tomorrow that comes out. But
All right, check it out.
Yep.
But I think there's a good amount of evidence to suggest that the ancient robots might actually be the constructs, but the Zonai have kind of built on the technology. Yeah, there are still a lot of kinks, and it's really speculation based. To be honest, it's a lot of speculation.
The ones from Skyward Sword, you
Yeah.
feel like those are similar.
They're connected in some way. They're not like related. Well, no, they are related. Sorry, but
I mean, it's
it's speculation.
We're all
it's
just guessing
speculation
at the
till
moment. No shame.
Yeah,
I think it's entirely fair since now we have that confirmation with like the word Zonai. I think it's completely fair to still be like speculative about it because the story does look like it's going to be huge in this game.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it's a really good possibility. There's some a little few bits of the evidence. There's a few funny quotes as well from Skyward Sword that kind of might suggest it, but then you can't really use that stuff because who knows if Skyward Sword and the Zonai are even somewhat connected? Because realistically, yeah.
Well, you might be able like speculation like that at this point. Like, I don't think we're getting any more trailers. Really, like I don't think we're getting anything else until.
I don't know. I think we'll get one more trailer.
I think
do
we
you
get
think
one
it'll
more.
be substantial, like a substantial big?
Yes, I do think we'll get one more sometime before. I think maybe each week now they might release a little bit, maybe a bit of. Yeah, I think each week they might release not like a full trailer. I think it'll be just a couple more gameplay demonstrations of things, and then near the end I think they'll reveal one more trailer. So
TriforceTrends, what about you?
Yeah, personally, I'm thinking one more big trailer. You know, like everyone's clamoring for that Breath of the Wild January 2017 trailer still. I don't think it'll be to that proportion. I feel like we're kind of overhyping if there is a trailer. But I think it will show more story elements, to be honest, because I don't think they've shown enough of the story at all past like maybe the very beginning, which I guess is fine, but you need like other little bits of cutscenes rather than literally one.
My feeling at the moment is that I think they're going to show one more thing and it will show something new, but it'll also be a smaller trailer like the ones we've had before this last gameplay reveal. And the reason is because I don't think it's possible to do a Breath of the Wild trailer without, well, okay. When you think about why that trailer is so popular, I think part of it, I think part of the reason, and we'll get to this later on, but one of the reasons why there's been a negative reaction to the way that Nintendo's doing the marketing is because our brains aren't registering a lot of the new stuff we're saying as new. So if you think about it, we've seen a good deal of the game, like a good deal of a lot of stuff, but our brains are registering it, I think, as, well, I know what that looks like. I know what that feels like. And in Breath of the Wild, we had never gotten our hands on that. We had no idea what climbing was going to feel like. You know, we had no idea what fighting an enemy was going to feel like, what Flurry Rush was going to feel like. Anything they showed in Breath of the Wild, it's like, oh, look at these beautiful landscapes. It's all so good that you can climb anything. You can do all this stuff. You can fight all of these things. And all of it was completely new and fresh. But now when you see a Hinox or you see or anything, you're kind of relating it to what you kind of already know about Breath of the Wild. So I think that, like, objectively we've seen a good deal, but it's not registering as new, even though it technically is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I see.
Yeah,
I see that.
I think someone brought this up in my Discord. I mean, obviously, you know, people are looking back at the trailers now and they're going, "Oh wait, that trailer actually showed way more than it really seemed like it was." Especially, E3 2021. That trailer showed off a lot of stuff. September 2022, maybe not, but I think, that trailer in particular definitely showed off a lot of stuff, like just fusing. Fusing was in that trailer. The Ascend was in that trailer. There's a lot of, like, abilities that we've now just been shown that were in that trailer 2 years ago, which is nuts. So yeah, it's fun to look back at old trailers and really understand what we didn't know what we were looking at, but now we kind of do. Yeah.
That brings me to okay, so what do you guys think about the Ascend underwater thing that people are talking about? Like, there's a moment where Link dives into the water and he can use it. The Ascend ability lights up and he can use it to get to the surface. Do you think that implies underwater exploration or underwater facilities?
Let me be rash. No. To be honest, not me personally. I can understand where people are coming from with it, though. It's not like one of those things where someone says it and it's like the most outlandish thing of all time, and everyone's just like, "Why would you say that?" Mm-hmm. I do kind of think it might just be one of those things the devs have just kind of overlooked, and it's not. I mean, maybe they might saw it after. I don't know. Maybe not, because they have decided to show us that. But I don't know. Then again, a lot of the stuff in the gameplay was very intentional. Like the Zonai charge thing, or probably anyway. They're just like, oh, Zonai charge, moving on. Never mind. Or like, God, I can't. There was little bits that are just, they show more than they let on initially. But I think when it comes to underwater stuff, I am still really hoping that there is a lot of underwater stuff in the game. But to render that along with the Skylands, along with what's in whichever lakes, because there are a lot, I think there's a lot more lake beds or like little water beds. So there's always a chance, and I could just be a big old pessimist on this front. But personally, I'm not on board with it.
What about you, NintendoBlackCrisis? Underwater?
Before watching the most recent gameplay presentation, I was like, okay, so if they don't have any sort of underwater here, then I'm going to go with it's not in. And then we saw the presentation, there was nothing. So I was like, oh yeah, underwater probably is not going to be a thing. But then I saw that, like, I think it was first a Reddit post that had brought it up. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. So maybe there is. But I'm trying not to get my hopes up because
hopes.
I really, I feel like it probably more likely isn't.
Okay.
But I do want to see it feels like something they would have shown to us a bit earlier, even if it was just like a single clip of Link swimming underwater somewhere.
I think especially as well, when we think about, like, in the February trailer, how, like, there's still that place that we probably haven't seen, like in any, like, you know, the mushroom area, like what
The
is all
underground.
this? Yeah, the underground
Yes.
shot.
Yeah.
I think if we include that as well, it would actually be too much to do underwater as well as all that stuff. Even if that shot of the underground, if it is the underground,
Let's talk
even
about that.
was.
Let's
Yeah,
talk
go
about
on.
that underground. Like that. Okay. Like the image that I get from seeing that is that we're looking at a big cavernous, like large,
Oh, yeah.
sprawling,
Yeah.
interconnected underworld-like area. I'm talking something on the level of like Elden Ring did in its underground sections, like something really big that connects to each other and with multiple entrances, like something actually just massive. That's the image I get.
Huge.
Yeah, from something like that. Do you guys think that's what we're getting? Something along those lines?
Okay, so yeah, sorry, I gotta say. So
Okay.
we, I don't know. Obviously, I know. Both of you, you've probably seen some of the tweets, but me and Adam, Hyrule Gamer, we've assembled. We've got another friend, and we've assembled, and we call each other the Cave Boys.
Yeah, I've seen that on Twitter.
Yeah, it's me, Hyrule Gamer, and a new Zelda tuber, Zinc. And it's every time we get in a call, it's just like, is this a cave? Is this a cave? And we just like start making these noises, just like we just want caves. But yeah, I'm really in the camp that I really think that is underground. I mean, it could just be like a Dark World sort of thing because it's very different. You guys probably played Terraria, right? Or Terraria, depending
Love
on how you say
Terraria.
it.
I
Yeah,
haven't.
great. Oh, it's a great game. But there's like in some underground sections, there's like these mushroom type areas, and it just instantly reminded me of that, which is why I think it gave me this kind of connection in my head where it's just like okay, mushroom, that means underground, which it kind of does. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all I can say on it. I think the mining Bocco with the
Right.
with the sound effects, I think that's more clarification. And
Yeah, there
just
was
the
an
fact it's
echo.
so
There was some
different.
yeah.
The reverb.
Okay.
is
Well,
crazy.
also there are stalactites on the ceiling.
That too.
But like, ever since the first trailer, I think that's been my most anticipated. Like, I still am most excited
About
for
that.
an underground
Cave Boys.
area. Yes, it's
That's my most.
I
That's
feel-
my
I
most
feel
wanted
like-
thing.
Yeah, same.
yeah. Well, it's just all this time they've been misleading us, and I think it's intentional. Like, because at first trailer, underground. Oh, great! So we're gonna have underground exploration. That'll be a big thing. Here's the kingdom. Then the second trailer. Oh, hey, look, we're up in the sky now. Look, Sky Islands. In the third trailer, more Sky Island. I'm pretty sure they're going to hit us. Oh yeah, here's the underground. And really, it's just that shot that's the final nail in the coffin for me. That I'm like sure we're gonna have big underground areas to explore with that whole chasm area. So that's what I'm most excited to see. And even if it is kind of like a Dark World instead, it would if that's what the Dark World looks like,
You'd
then
be
it's like,
okay with it.
So
Yeah.
so it still looks like a underground area. And I have a feeling that the most malice we're going to see of the three, well, assuming the underground is one of the layers, I feel like most of the malice is going to be in the underground section.
Right.
Yeah, I
It
definitely.
does seem to be like erupting from
yeah.
the ground all over the place. It's just coming out from below, coming out of Death Mountain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely at the minute the way that I think we might be entering something like that is through those I keep calling them like malice events. I don't know if that's like the accepted term, but like those massive like blotches of malice that seems to just be on the world. I think that might be a way of getting in, especially since like the bokoblins are infested with malice and stuff. It is just speculation, but yeah.
I think those streams we've occasionally seen that kind of look like streams of malice, I think those are coming from those holes.
Yeah.
That'd be really cool. And it's a good
Now-
visual indicator of how to get to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's assuming that those, ribbons going up to the sky are malice, but I don't think it's water. It looks like streams of malice.
Yeah, especially
Yeah.
did you see the waterfalls they cut off? Like the actual waterfalls
Yeah.
coming from sky. Yeah, they cut off and in the gameplay.
And in real life they would.
Yeah.
It's not like the water would stay like that until it goes all the way down.
Right.
It would be a really cool way to like get to the islands, But also, that would be a real long freaking animation if Link just uses like his Zora armor to like his, because it's pretty slow when you're ascending waterfalls in Zora's domain. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that's another thing I'm just really excited to see. I want to see what the deal is with those Malice strands. Are they like pulling down the islands? Maybe does that suggest that perhaps the Triforce is actually hidden in the sky and Ganondorf's trying to pull the islands down to get to it?
So there's this interesting thing. I don't want to forget about this about the caverns.
Yeah.
In the shot where you see the caverns, there appears to be metal blocks, the kinds that you could manipulate with magnesis in Breath of the Wild. And I only noticed that recently. I saw it on a post somewhere, and I was like, oh, wait a minute. If those blocks are there, then does that imply that we'll have the access to the Sheikah Slate abilities as well as the ARM abilities? Do you guys think that that's the case?
I've seen a post similar to that, and I mean, yeah, assuming that Ultra Hand can't just now, because just because they're metal blocks, it doesn't mean that the Ultra Hand won't be able to pick them up.
Right.
So it could just be a case where he can also pick up metal blocks with Ultra Hand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would love to see like a playable Zelda, and maybe she has like, because some of that artwork with her has a new type of Sheikah Slate, and we know from the lore that you can make a Sheikah Slate of yourself, because Pyrrha made one for her own little rune that she was trying to develop.
Well, maybe let's talk about that. What do you guys think the chances are of playable Zelda with her own Sheikah Slate?
I don't know about the chances. I would like it. I think Nintendo are a really weird company.
I know a perfect way they could implement it into the game, but it's
just, do they?
I don't know about the chances of it actually happening. Okay, so a big problem with a game that's as trying to be free as Breath of the Wild is it's hard to like make a good story, because the better the story kind of ties to how linear the experience is.
Mm-hmm.
And Tears of the Kingdom probably is gonna try and be a bit more linear while also giving a lot more freedom, especially when it comes to like the gameplay mechanics. But a way I see it working so well is kind of like how Paper Mario does it, actually, because after every single chapter you complete, there's a very brief interlude with Peach, and it's just a bit of her perspective of things, a little short story, and then it cuts back to Mario in the next chapter. So I was thinking, if they gave people the freedom to tackle dungeons in whatever order you want, then they could set it up where after the completion of a dungeon, the game then will briefly cut to Princess Zelda, who's maybe like exploring underground ruins, looking at some murals, and by doing that, she could kind of start to learn the story of what happened a super long time ago through these murals.
Right.
And then after a bit of time of that, which is a bit more of a linear segment, it could then just cut back to Link leaving that dungeon, and then he can do whatever he wants. So the story bits would only trigger after he completes, a set amount of dungeons. I think that would be a great way to have the freedom with the linear story.
Yeah.
TriforceTrends, what do you think?
I to be honest, I pretty much agree. I actually don't have anything to add at all. My entire like perception of the storytelling in general and like Zelda's role, if she is playable in any way whatsoever, was always that it'd just be like maybe after a couple of dungeons, say there is like 8 or 9 dungeons, which feels like too many, but man, with the development time, you'd really hope so. But I think it would be a good way of, like NBC said, just incorporating that open-ended, not storytelling, but the open-ended world in general into a linear story at the same time. And I think doing it at the end of dungeons would be a great way to break up Link's open gameplay as well, for especially for more traditional players.
So you guys
Yeah.
seem to be taking into assuming that the story is going to be more linearly told than Breath of the Wild with more restrictions. So let me ask you just some basic questions. Do you guys think we'll be able to go to the final boss immediately like we could in Breath of the Wild?
If we can, it's probably going to be significantly harder to actually beat.
I I I've considered it, but I've still not come up with a good answer, to be honest.
Do you,
I think
do you
I
think
think it might not be. I think it was a Celtic video way back, like I think in September, that talked about how high the islands go. It might even have been way further back, but how high the islands might go, and maybe the final dungeons at the very top. And Hyrule Castle is kind of like this red herring where it's not actually the final dungeon
yeah.
of the game compared to
Yeah, I'm
normal.
sure it's not the final. I'm
Yeah,
positive it. There's no way they
there
would do
is
that
no way.
twice.
Especially,
Um,
yeah, it'd be weird. That'd be very weird.
I'm kind of hoping you don't know where the final boss is. Like even if they do make him accessible and beatable, I hope they don't. Honestly, I'm with you guys. I hope it's gated by something. Like let's say you can do the dungeons in any order, or you can do the first 3 dungeons in any order, and then you can go and you have to find the
Yeah,
dungeons and ask people around. You know, go to settlements and figure out where the dungeons are. Something like that. Like actually, just not knowing where stuff is like that would be the best because I'm thinking what would encourage people to explore Hyrule again? What's encouraging? They're reusing the map. A lot of people are complaining about it. What if you have to find stuff that wasn't there before? What do you have to go locate the dungeon entrances and they're in Hyrule or they're in the Sky Islands? And you have to ask people in settlements, something like that. Even if the guy is available from the start, I just kind of wish that you don't know where he is. So okay, fine, go find him.
yeah. Oh, do you know with like the coordinates on the map? I
Yeah.
would love if it's not just like, oh yeah, here's a quest marker, just go to that place. I'd love if they just went, here are the coordinates for a dungeon, or here are the coordinates for a certain person, go there. But I don't know if they'll do it because I don't think a younger audience is gonna ever think about that. But you could make it like an assisted mode, kind of like Mario Odyssey. I don't know.
It's funny because I was talking to Monster Maze just before this recording, and he shared kind of some thoughts that I had when I first saw those map coordinates, and they kind of feel like they're not going to be in the final game.
Yeah, I can
It
definitely
feels
see that.
it feels kind of out of place on the map. They might have it, but if they do, I hope there are like quests or something where you just get numbers and you have to figure out where that is, because if they don't have something that kind of uses that and ties it into the gameplay mechanic, then there's no real point of including it, because stuff like that little sound detector thing,
Yeah.
you can use that to try and sneak up on enemies. There's the hot and cold to check if you're going to take damage or not, and the map itself obviously is going to be used for navigation. You're not going to rely on the coordinates. You're going to more like use the visual look of the map. So if they include it in the game, they would have to have some sort of like a side mission or something where they just give you a set of numbers and then you find like some special gear or something.
I would like that. One of my favorite games is Morrowind, and one of the things it's best known for is that it didn't give you map coordinates a lot of the times. They verbally told you what to do, and you had to go actually, follow their
Yeah.
directions.
Note it down.
Even
just
even
go.
for Elden Ring, I think it did that.
Yeah,
It just
yeah,
kind of like
sometimes.
characters just told you where to go, and you'd be like, oh, okay.
Oh yeah, like the quest lines. Yeah, yeah. Cool.
Okay, so another thing we're taking for granted here is that you both seem to think that we're getting dungeons. Like,
Yeah, I was about
Yeah,
to say that
yeah.
as well. We're all both of us are assuming it. Yep.
it's funny. Like, I haven't online. There are a lot of people that are really, really pro dungeon to the point where it's like no dungeon, no buy. Okay, but out of all the YouTubers that I talk to, we're all kind of on the same positions. Like, we would really like dungeons. It's not like a no dungeon, no buy situation. We'll still buy, but like, it seems like there's nobody that's not pro dungeon. Like at least a little bit.
Yeah, I definitely see that. Dude, dungeons were just so good in older games, and not to knock the Divine Beast, because I think some of the puzzles in the Divine Beast are really good. But
They're clever.
I kind of go back to Linked Between Worlds, actually. Because that game, it had the smaller dungeons, the bite-sized dungeons, but for some reason it made sense in that game, and there's also a lot of them. And you can do them in whatever order as well, actually, so it's an even better comparison. But along with that, there's also with the Divine Beast, they're too small and they're not themed enough, in my opinion. I went through Van Meadow on stream probably about a year back now, and it was like 20 minutes, and I'd not done it in like 2 years. It was like, what?
When you know how to do Van Meadow, I think it legit takes like 8 or 9 minutes.
It is ridiculous how genuinely quickly you can beat some of the Divine Beasts. I think Vanaboris is pretty good, because it's kind of got that. It's kind of got more of that puzzling theme, but it's also kind of got its own identity as well. It's not just like with Varuta, you've got water-based puzzles, but it's not really like sewn into the dungeon itself, apart from like a little bit of water just being kind of spread all over the place. And then the start of Varudania is pretty good, and then it just kind of
all of the
becomes
starts are, like all of the entrances into the Divine Beasts, I think, are really great. Like I love the having to work together with the Champion's descendants or whatever to get into the Divine Beast. That part's always very hype. It's very cool. Well, anyway, Nintendo Black Crisis. Dungeons, yes or no?
Before I mention that, you're talking about Varuta. I've always kind of described Varuta as it's not a water dungeon. It's just a dungeon that happens to have water in it. Also, I think a reason why the Divine Beasts felt underwhelming is because they were forced to work with the scale that they had set.
Right.
Because we were able to see them from, the outside, and they looked massive. But by doing so, they had to kind of like
cram all the puzzles into it.
Yes, exactly. Cram them all in. And even then, when you enter the dungeons, they're obviously separate maps.
Yeah.
And they're bigger than the ones that we saw from the outside.
Right.
And even then, they're not big enough. So it's really difficult. And that's why dungeons which they just like they're in like a mountain and there's just an entrance.
Yeah. Much
they
better.
Don't have to worry.
Yeah.
They don't have to worry about that because they, it's in a mountain. They can just make it as
I can suspend my disbelief really good when it's like an entrance into a mountain or a cave.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's why I feel like that's one of the things that really held them back when designing it. So, sorry, what was the question?
The question was, do you think we're going to get dungeons in Tears of the Kingdom?
Yes, I do think we're going to get dungeons. I hope they would just fall back to the traditional dungeons. I don't think so. They're probably going to try and make them more, I guess, open air, to try and take advantage of Breath of the Wild's open world.
You think they won't be in a separate map?
I don't know.
Even the Divine Beasts were in a separate map. It just didn't look like it.
Yeah, there was a loading screen. Yeah.
Right. They might have like one or two that are unique where they have like a bit more of an open air element to them. But yeah, I do think some of them would have like a loading screen and they would be more traditional. But they're not. I don't think they're gonna fully fall back to that.
I think Hyrule Castle is like a perfect example of what a good Breath of the Wild dungeon could be. Especially, I'd never even considered this until like the last couple of weeks. But like the Lionel on the walk up to, if you just take like the standard linear walk up and you face this Lionel and the gates drop behind you, and it's almost exactly like a mini boss.
Oh yeah.
But it's just
that's true.
And I think that as well as like the Stalnox as well. So it's like a couple of mini bosses. It's open format, but it's also got those elements that people really want out of dungeons. But you need to kind of mesh them even more together, I think, for people to be truly happy with them. Because I think Hyrule Castle was a great start at trying to look at dungeons in this formula. But is there a better way of incorporating, items? Is there a better way of incorporating just, like, even stupid stuff like keys? Just is there a better way to make it linear whilst also feeling open? I guess it's kind of...
Tears of the Kingdom's biggest hurdle to overcome isn't necessarily the fact that it's a sequel to like Breath of the Wild. It's just that Breath of the Wild brought in so many new players, and it's very different how it works compared to the quote unquote traditional Zelda experience. So it's kind of like it needs to find a mix between the traditional or, you know, older Zelda and quote unquote modern Zelda. I think that's its biggest challenge when you take a step back and look at it.
Let me put in my 2 cents because we getting antsy. There's a lot to say about that. Okay, first of all, I will knock the Divine Beasts. I hate the Divine Beasts. I think they're tiny. I think they're ugly. I think that I didn't notice that they actually had different theme songs until recently. Like I went back.
Oh, you didn't?
And
you didn't?
No,
What?
But they do.
I've seen. To be fair, I have seen a couple people mention that, and I'm like, what?
I had no idea. And not only that, the theme songs have phases for everything that you do. It's like, man, that's a lot of effort to make all the theme songs sound exactly the same. Because they're actually different. So I don't like the look of it. I don't like the malice scoop all over the place. I don't like the color scheming on them. I don't like that they all look the same. Everything about them is terrible. And yet, despite that, I think they're actually super clever because they worked within the bounds of these models that they had to work with. You know, and they put a gimmick in each one, like they move and the dungeon changes around it. It was actually super cool. And I'm like, what could they do dungeon-wise if they could take that creativity and not be bound by the limitations of this tiny model that they have to work with and actually just stick it in the ground and make a dungeon? Like, I'm not even asking for strictly linear dungeons like we had before. Like, I'm not expecting to find a hook shot and need the hook shot to clear the dungeon. You know, I'm not expecting to find the iron boots and need the iron boots to clear the dungeon. I'm not expecting anything like that. Mix the 4 divine beasts and cram them all into Hyrule Castle and make it bigger and add a bunch of puzzles, and then make it thematically distinct so that there's individual, clearly distinct music in each one. Make it visually appealing to look at while you're in there, so that I'm in a mood while I'm in there. And that's all. That's it. That's it. Done and dusted. Like 10 out of 10 game. Greatest Zelda game ever made.
I will actually fully agree.
It's funny how I didn't really pick this up when I first played it, but after a while I was like, oh, hold on. These dungeons have like no enemies in them.
Yeah.
And the only enemies they do have, I think, are the Guardian Scouts.
Yeah, the
those
cursed
enemies. Those are the only two that they have. But also I think you know, people talk about how they kind of dislike the shrines. They don't really want to see that come back in Tears of the Kingdom. I think, though, it's not the fact that people don't like the shrines. I think it's just how underwhelming the main dungeons were. I think if this game had that exact same shrine format, but it brought back those traditional dungeons, people would love the shrines.
They would love the shrines.
It's just, and at that point, the only thing that I'd like to see is just have the shrines visually look different based on like what region they're in.
Perfect.
I know that, like,
perfect solution.
I know that some technically, you know, like you had ones in Elden where they had some a floor was like lava, but that was really all there was. that was all there was. You know, with the occasional fire being part of the actual puzzle. But last night on the Fifth Dimension with the HMK, I brought this up. It would be so cool, like a game like Portal, when you're playing through it and you go through all these different levels. Eventually, in those games, it's like the main character kind of finds a way out of bounds and it starts to explore puzzles that aren't actually finished. So what if, like, one of the shrines you would visit in Breath of the Wild, it was like broken down, there were no lights, everything was off, and there were like vines growing in, and you had to like make your way through
that would be everyone's favorite shrine.
What felt like, exactly, because it sticks out, because it's completely unique and different.
Yeah.
You have to like try and solve the puzzles
in
that were intended to be puzzles.
in Elden Ring, they had something like shrines. Like if you take the legacy dungeons in Elden Ring to be like the replacement for the actual dungeons in Dark Souls, the little mini dungeons in the caves and the catacombs and stuff like that would be like the equivalent of shrines for Zelda. And so they all also looked the same, and they were not visually distinct. And some of them would have like traps that had a different elemental type trap based on the region, kind of like the lava in that you mentioned in that one shrine. And people don't really like them, but they don't really hate them. You know why? Because we have the legacy dungeons also. Like the meat is right there. But in Tears of the Kingdom, it's like 120 shrines can get tiresome if you don't also have like a big, meaty dungeon to sink your teeth into.
There were so many genius puzzles that were really well executed, like the concept in the shrines, but it ended way too quickly. One of my favorites, the best example I have is, I think it's in Hebra. I think it's called like Tandem or something like that. It's the boulders that are suspended by the ropes.
Oh,
okay.
And you have to like shoot the ropes to like make the boulders hit the buttons. And in one, you have to make it fall straight down. There's 2 ropes. So you use stasis on the boulder, shoot the 2 ropes, then unfreeze it so it drops straight on the button. And I'm like, this is a really cool puzzle concept.
Right.
But it's literally, it's like, if you don't go for the optional chest, it's like 2 puzzles and it's done.
Yeah.
It's like 3 minutes. I'm like, what?
They could really
like, it was such a good idea.
They could cram like this into a dungeon, like extend it for a lot longer, and cram like 6 or 8 shrines into it worth of stuff into a dungeon. People would love it. People would love it.
There's that one shrine that I think is the longest.
Oh.
I don't know if you remember. It's a lot of it's based on
is it the blue
mechanics.
flame one?
Yeah. And that one is good. I feel like that one though is an example of it maybe being a tad too long, because that one is it's mainly long when you compare it to all the other ones.
Right.
But like, it's just, they need to find that balance, and they could greatly improve on those mini puzzles.
Oh, okay.
Sounds tight.
We're all hoping for dungeons.
Yeah.
It's, Nintendo.
Hey, listen
please.
to us.
Okay, we're talking about shrines. What do you think we're going to get shrines back?
Yeah, some form. Yep.
TriforceTrends?
I'm really 50-50 on it at the minute. I think probably, yeah. Overall, I'm probably more 60-40 on yes shrines. But I also think there's a chance that the smaller caves might offer the shrines, because we've seen a stone talus in a cave.
Yeah.
We've seen a Hinox chasing Link in a cave. We've seen another boss in a cave. The enemy that we keep calling a like that might not be a like but does look like a like. Especially that shot, actually, the like shot, because you can see like the pedestal in the background. I could see those at least offering chests, especially since they're ticked off and everything, the caves. But apart from that, there's not that much evidence to suggest it. So yeah, I could see some amount of shrining.
Like in the latest gameplay trailer, they showed what looks like a teleportation icon in the minimap. And the teleportation icon looks like those Zonai swirl monuments that we've seen around in the overworld. Do you think... Okay, so first of all, do you think that icon is teleportation?
Yes, 100% at warp point.
Definitely teleportation. Yeah.
And you think that do you think they're tied to those monuments?
You mean the shrine, the icon?
Yeah. Is the icon is the teleportation point those monuments that had the Zonai swirl on them?
Yeah,
I believe so. There is a point where in the demonstration, just before the shot cuts, when Link is on the raft and he turns the propellers on, one of the shrine icons pop up, and if you look forward around that time, it looks like there's, on the top of the cliff where Link is looking, there's the bottom bit of one of those shrines.
Okay.
So I am like 99% sure that they will be tied to that. Whether they also have puzzles, who knows? But the fact that it looks so similar to the Sheikah Shrine icon.
Yeah.
I have a feeling there might be some sort of puzzle attached to it.
I'm going to go ahead and go on a limb and say that it's totally going to have the exact same shrine format. It's not even going to be like similar. It's going to do the same thing where it teleports you to an enclosed space, except it won't be Sheikah stuff. It will be Zonai themed, and they'll all be like that. I'm going to go. They're not going to reinvent the wheel, I think, for this. I'm like 99% sure that it's just going to be the same thing again. They're going to be shrines. They'll teleport you to a shrine-like location, but it'll be like green instead of blue with a new theme song. And we're going to just that's
Shrines
just going to
in
be
the sacred realm.
At the very least, we know now that those spiraling structures aren't exclusive to the ground.
True.
Right.
So I feel like that also further just
We would need a teleportation thing
Yes,
to the sky
yes.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah, because if it was ground only, then it's like, oh, okay, well, are we always going to just have to like manually get up to the sky? But it does feel like, at the very least, it's like nearly 100% confirmed that they will be teleported to.
Right.
But yeah, puzzles, it's much less, I feel much less confident about it, but I still think it hints towards that.
So one of the things that I noticed about those little caves in the Sky Islands, they did have check marks. Do you think that we'll have similar caves in the ground that will have check marks all over the place, or do you think that the caves in the ground will all be related to that sprawling underground that we keep talking about?
I hope that I love how you make the cave boy answer. I love the fact that I love the idea. Sorry, that the underground. From that one shot with the Bokoblin mining, does have a load of entrances, and like, I think there's been a couple now that we might have seen, a couple of cave entrances that we might have seen, but it's never like 100% clear on the surface. But I hope that you go in and it's just a massive place, but I can't see it happening, to be honest. I think more so it would just be small little linear challenges that, you know, either they give you a chest or something, an item of some description, which is kind of weird for Zelda, especially after Breath of the Wild, because your items, they mean a lot, but they don't mean as much as they should. Yeah, and it's like, especially going back to Elden Ring, actually. In Elden Ring, with your caves, at the very end, you've got an item that you will use, or you might use, for the rest of your playthrough. When it comes to Tears of the Kingdom, it might be an item that you can fuse with stuff, but if there's so many caves that have items that you might fuse with stuff, or weapons that you might fuse with stuff, then yeah, okay, those might be like the bigger caves give off like cool weapons or whatever. But what if they break? The smaller caves might give off, like your amber type stuff, like those items that you don't really need, but they're there if you want them.
I think this leads actually to a different question. Let me ask BlackCrisis. Do you think we'll be able to fuse more than two things at the same time to a weapon? So, like, you saw them fuse a stick to a rock. Do you think that they'll be able to fuse something else to the stick rock?
So I had made a whole video on the possible crafting with Commonwealth, which it did age pretty good given what we saw. I even mentioned in it, I was like, oh, it's possible we'll be able to fuse elemental chew jellies with arrows. Yeah,
good job.
And then I also was like, oh, vehicles aren't necessarily limited to sky and ground. We could have some that traverse the surface of the water. Yeah. But in a particular part, I had pointed out that with the 2021, with the shield attached to the dragon that has flamethrower, it's very similar to the one where Link has that claymore-like weapon shooting that explosive projectile at a talus. And at that point, I was like, okay, so maybe the weapons are made up of three things. One is like the handle, second is the Zonai dragon, but then you can like add a separate attachment to the mouth to give it a different attack. However, with the recent gameplay presentation, especially that official artwork which shows that flamethrower enemy, I was thinking, oh, okay, so maybe it's just going to be two parts.
Yeah.
The actual weapon that, or whatever Link is holding, and then he'll defeat this construct, and then that whole weapon, both the dragon and flamethrower, will just be like built into each other, and it'll just be a separate item. So I think it's just going to be two things.
Yeah, it'd be too much. It'd be too much if there was too.
There is a bit where you can see that the wooden stick attached to the log is now called like a log club, and there is the option to fuse the rock to the log club, but instead he fuses it to his shield. I'm pretty sure that would just replace the log
With the rock.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't think we'll be seeing more than two objects fused together.
I think I asked this, but let me ask it explicitly because I don't think I got a perfect answer. The robots being broken in the Sky Islands, do you think there'll be any time travel? Like, that's probably like the biggest theory that was rolling around before the gameplay demonstration, that the time travel would be a thing and it would be similar to a Dark World. Do you think there'll be any kind of time travel that will bring those robots back to life, or something like that?
If there was time travel, I would want it to be added in with time shift stones. It was such a good mechanic.
Beautiful mechanic.
Technically, though, like when the moment I saw those robots, I was like, that part of me was like, maybe there's gonna be like a time shift stone like the ancient robots of Lanayru. But then I realized technically we have recall already.
Yeah.
We might be able to use recall to do that. And Zelda, they love just incorporating time travel into a bunch of things. I don't know. I guess if there is any sort of time manipulation, they probably would use it through recall. I hope there's like a time shift stone mechanic. Like, okay, if there is a time mechanic that is introduced that is outside of recall, I want it to be time shift stones.
Yeah, even if it's like an ability. You know how we haven't seen like all the runes yet? It'd be cool. Yeah,
that's also an exciting thing. Yeah, we nothing's saying that those are the only 4, and those already have so much depth.
I mean, when it comes to those dead robots, I mean, we know they're not like dead, like killed off, like Link has killed the robot and then it explodes and then gives you a Zonai charge, because that's not how that works. So it's doubtful that they die very slowly like that. So it's probably like run out of battery or something like that. In which case, I don't see a reason to really keep them there. Apart from, obviously, just world building. Unless there's a reason for them being there. And I think the Zelda team is very good at intricately putting stuff in the world. Especially in Breath of the Wild as well, that just kind of, it makes you think, or there's a reason for it. It's either one of those things, even like with the ruins in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, I was... to provide a bit of a counter argument to these constructs that are ruined definitely hints at something. Like, even with Breath of the Wild, there were tons of Guardians that were in similar condition, completely destroyed.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
And then there are ones that were perfectly functional. So that's one reason why I'm trying to feel, not get my hopes up, because it could just be that some of them just happen to be ruined.
Yeah, that's fair. A little bit of copium doesn't hurt anyone.
Yeah.
Okay, well, speaking of story stuff, probably the biggest thing that I'm hoping for in Tears of the Kingdom is some kind of linearity to the story. Like we mentioned, like maybe the dungeons reveal more of the story or something like that, and maybe the dungeons are separate, and after each dungeon you get a little bit more or something like that. What I'm hoping for is I don't want the story narrated to me through cutscenes, past cutscenes like that we got in Breath of the Wild. I thought the cutscenes themselves were really cool. But what do you guys think? Do we think we're getting a more linear story than we had before, a more traditionally told story?
Okay, I can give a quick answer. My first thought.
Okay, go ahead.
I kind of think so, because I feel like that's also kind of why they're being so hush about the story. I feel like there wouldn't be much of a reason to be hush about the story unless it's actually taking place after the events of that first, or what presumably is like the first event in the story where something happens to Zelda and Ganondorf's resurrected. I think there's a reason why they keep showing that bit and nothing else past that, because, I mean, you know, with the Breath of the Wild 2017 trailer, it showed off quite a lot of the story bits that were all memories that looking back just makes me sad.
Yeah.
Because that trailer looks so cool, and it's like, oh yeah, but the story's 100 years ago. But yeah, I think that's at least a point to bring up. I think overall it probably will have a more linear story. I don't know how linear it will be overall though.
What about you, Nintendo?
Just Nintendo.
Yeah, same thing. Yes, hello, it is me, Eiji Onuma.
Why is your name Nintendo? What is the crisis and why is it black?
First off, no, it's not racist. To be honest, I get a lot less comments than I expect of that. So occasionally I get like, "Oh man, are you racist?" But it's like, no. It's just a lot of people have like these childhood stories of how they came up with their names. Me, it was just like, I really like Nintendo games, so I'm like, okay, I'll have Nintendo, and it kind of like like Nintendo Capri Sun and all those other YouTubers that have like Nintendo in it. And then my favorite game, Pokemon game, was Pokemon Black version, so I'm like, oh okay, I'll put Nintendo Black. And then I was like, NBC sounds pretty cool. What's a cool C word? Oh, Crisis. Okay, there we go, Nintendo Black Crisis. Done. Bam. That's it.
That's the origin story. Nice.
That's literally the origin story. That's the lore. That's all the lore. Anyways, right. So I did like the cutscenes in Breath of the Wild. I hope we get more of those. It would be cool if we could have more, I don't know if the word's like dynamic, but like, we're walking somewhere and then in the background you can hear a voiceover of someone talking to you. I don't know if
I think I don't know. It definitely makes sense. Yeah,
it's just it's like an interactive cutscene, I guess, kind of like how I never consider the Dark Beast Ganon a part of the boss fight. I just consider it an interactive cutscene. The fight's already done. But one game that ironically has tons of cutscenes, but I love the way they do the story. And it's one that they mentioned was a bit of an inspiration when working on
Red Dead.
Red Dead Redemption 2. What I love about that story is there's like 4 different sub-chapters, and most of the time you can choose which ones you do in what order. And then after you complete those sub-chapters, there's one final chapter to end that bit, and then it leads to the next big sequence.
Okay.
So it would be really cool if we could choose what story things to do. I guess it's kind of like if you took the whole retake Divine Beast then beat Ganon, if you took that as like one chapter of a game, you could choose what Divine Beast to go after, and then like it leads to a big fight, and then the next chapter begins. I doubt that they will actually do that.
Right.
But
would be cool.
Yeah, I do want to see more of a linear story.
I just want stuff to happen as I'm doing it. Like that's all I want. I just want the stuff to be occurring in the present. As it's happening, I'm part of the story. I'm not just like finishing a story that is already basically done 100 years ago.
Well, a big part of, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but my biggest worry at this point is just like that Hyrule Surface will be too similar. And what would be really cool is if there were certain world events that happened. So once you get to a certain part of the game, all of a sudden, let's say, for example, those pillars of malice appear all of a sudden from those holes. Oh. And then, and maybe, I also mentioned this on the Fifth Dimension, maybe instead of a Blood Moon cutscene, on a rare occasion, the whole night is like a Blood Moon event. And then it just completely changes up how the world works. That way, you could have a completely different experience. You have different types of events that can happen, and they could potentially completely change up Hyrule's surface. Mm-hmm. Like that would be really
that's
cool.
a really cool idea.
Like the in the trailer where it showed the blood moon and the things spawning all over the place, but like that, but like being a severe event that's like really changing the landscape.
when I first played Breath of the Wild and I saw that Blood Moon cutscene, I freaked out because I thought when I saw those enemies walk, they were all gonna like come after me and stuff.
Yeah.
But after a while, I was like, oh, okay, it was just a respawn. Oh, okay, that was kind of underwhelming. The first time you experience it, though, it's like really creepy. So imagine if they actually went further with that.
You know, you mentioned. Okay, so I think it's finally time. We should talk about the elephant in the room. You mentioned how like your biggest concern is that there wouldn't be enough difference in the world map between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. That seems to be a big concern for a lot of people. In fact, there's a lot of people have noticed that there's a backlash against the marketing or something. There's a lot of people that are very unsatisfied. Let me just give me your impressions. Do you think that's happening? And give me your thoughts.
Like the thoughts on them.
The thoughts
not
on
marketing the game much.
No,
or?
the thoughts on so many people complaining and so many other people complaining about complaining. Just all the complaining that seems to be happening in the community.
Just ignore it, bro.
Big Giga chat.
It's a good policy.
I know you're always gonna have those people that complain about. I think the people who are complaining and claiming that the game is just DLC, like
True.
you need to chill.
Especially when God of War Ragnarok came out last year.
I understand the complaints about like the marketing, you know. For me, I just have always cared most about communication. That's why I appreciated when they updated us with the delay, because for a long time there would just be no news at all. It's like if it's the behind on development, you can tell us. Yeah, I mean, I just try to ignore it.
Right.
If you ignore it, you don't have to then complain about the complainers, because complaining about complainers just makes the complainers complain more.
Yeah, but that's good for engagement. My take on this, real quick, is I don't know. I kind of understand where it's coming from a marketing perspective, but I also agree with NBC in the way that it's nice to actually even have any amount of communication a lot of the time. Especially the last few months as well. Obviously, the delay happened, and then there was like a 6-month period where like nothing happened again, which is fine. It was kind of annoying that in that time frame, it's like, you know, June rolls by, and it's like there's nothing for Zelda, and June's normally like the month. It's the month normally. It isn't anymore, clearly. But I think the marketing side of things isn't a bad shout, especially since personally I wasn't such a fan of the September trailer, retrospectively.
I was actually gonna just mention that. I think it's fair to look at like individual trailers and be kind of disappointed, because the September trailer was essentially just a glorified title reveal. Most of it was just murals.
Right.
Which, like, lore wise is really cool, but casuals won't really, you know, I say casual, that sounds condescending. Casual fans won't care as much as that. And then when you all of a sudden look at the most recent trailer, like that, you guys mentioned how you're waiting for one that felt like 2017. I kind of felt like
that one was a great one.
Felt like, yeah, that one was great. And when you look, so I think when you criticize the individual news as it drops, I think that is I can understand that a bit more, because I do agree with the September one. It was just like a title.
You know when you
reveal.
edit a video and you put in a September trailer in,
Mm-hmm.
and then you go all the way like halfway through the trailer, and then that's when the actual gameplay starts, and you're just editing all the way through, and you're like, oh wait, hold on, when does it start?
Yeah. yeah. It's literally not gonna lie.
Yeah, true.
Well, second half, I guess. I don't know.
So I just let me drop some thoughts on this. I like examining these kinds of controversies and trying to figure out why they're happening. It's like a thing that I do whenever because it's odd actually. In every community that I've jumped into and tried to mesh with, they've all kind of been in this similar situation. You know, the Monster Hunter community is going through something like that. Because Monster Hunter World came out. It's very different from the previous Monster Hunter games. Monster Hunter Rise came out. It's even more different than the previous Monster Hunter games, and even people that were liking World don't even like Rise. And so there's fractures all over the place in those communities. The in Elden Ring, Elden Ring is almost universally acclaimed everywhere, but there's still the people that are like, Elden Ring has ruined the series. This is just Dark Souls 3.15. There's people that don't like Elden Ring, that think that space is empty, the whole open world formula that needs to go away. It's a lot of similarities to what happened with Zelda. The interesting thing about this specific situation is not that, you have classic fans that are like, I hate Breath of the Wild. I don't want them to keep doing this. There is a lot of people that are just upset about that, and they're lamenting the end of their favorite series. They don't like Breath of the Wild. They don't like the direction Zelda's going in. And that would have been interesting on its own to analyze. But specifically this situation, what I find weird is that there's a lot of pro Breath of the Wild people, like NintendoBlackCrisis, that are looking at the map and they're like, hey, I'm kind of worried that the map isn't going to feel as fresh as it did the first time. From what I'm seeing, I'm not looking at where all the new content is. I'm hoping and praying that there are hiding just like a whole lot that's going to make me change my mind. So there are people that are pro Breath of the Wild. These aren't the same people that were complaining before. Then they see this trailer and they're like, I don't know, like this mechanic sticking things to other things is cool and all. It looks fantastic, but I'm not sure that's enough to make me jump on board now.
I think, I don't know, when it...
Mm-hmm.
I've got weird thoughts on the game as a whole, but because it's the first time that we've seen a sequel with the exact same, like, overworld at the very least, like, I think genuinely one of the biggest problems with Tears of the Kingdom at the minute, I was going to do a whole video on this, but I don't think that's going to happen. I got too many videos to do. But the biggest problem with the game at the minute is that it could render Breath of the Wild genuinely, like, almost unplayable. That is... God, that came off a bit. This is maybe too much. But, yeah.
Do elaborate.
I think it could at least render it not unplayable. It could render it much harder to play, whereas you go to any other Zelda game in the series and it's like, okay, you can play Twilight Princess at any time, you can play Ocarina of Time at any time, you can play Majora's Mask and then play Ocarina of Time without a problem. But then when you go to Breath of the Wild, you play the game and it's like, this open world is really cool, isn't it? There's all these intricate details, there's these shrines, these divine beasts. The divine beasts are, hit or miss for a lot of people. So if Tears of the Kingdom actually does have, like, these dungeons that people just like there's just people that just like them across the board, and they still have this shrine layout, and they still have this overworld it's changed, but marginally so, and, like, the landscape itself,
maybe better.
And the landscape itself is still around. So if you're building on a world that you've already made a game in, the problem with that is trying to make it so Breath of the Wild is still playable after playing Tears of the Kingdom. Because, like, at the minute, for a lot of people, Breath of the Wild is top 5. But after Tears of the Kingdom, it could genuinely put it down a lot in people's rankings because Tears of the Kingdom was just that much better. Especially if it's better in a story front, a dungeon front, and an overworld front, I guess. Yeah.
So you're saying that other Zelda games each have their own unique appeal. But Tears of the Kingdom seems to be the same appeal as Breath of the Wild, but
amplified.
Better. So it could just be better Breath of the Wild, and then if you have better Breath of the Wild by itself might not have enough of a unique appeal to get people to come back. It
even comes down to, like, even crafting and stuff like that. A lot of people, they think that the crafting elements were a bit too shallow in Breath of the Wild. Well, they've expanded on even that. It's and the abilities as well. The abilities. Ultra Hand, it seems even more freeing than Magnesis. Stasis is technically Recall, I guess, if you could even, like, make that comparison. Just all of these small things could amount to Breath of the Wild becoming this thing that drops down from, like, even first place for a lot of people to, like, 5th, 7th, 8th, 10th. It's weird. It's very weird. I love the game to pieces. I absolutely love Breath of the Wild. I'm also in the camp that probably doesn't put it top 4, maybe top 5 though. I absolutely love the game. I love the lore behind the game. It's my favorite... Okay, this is stupid because I hate saying this. It's my favorite video game of all time, but it's not my favorite Zelda game. I hate saying that because it makes zero sense whatsoever.
Well, it's similar. Well, it's similar to that argument of like,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that you're saying that it's a bad game, but it reminds me of the people who say, "Oh, it's a great game. It's just not a great Zelda game."
Right.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I don't even want to get into that.
Yeah, I've talked about that enough. I'm not doing that right now.
Yeah, but I think the biggest problem for me is ever since the release, the way they have appeared to try and solve the issue is by adding more. So here are underground areas, here are sky islands, here are new areas you can visit, and they haven't spent enough time on, okay, here's how we have changed the surface.
Right.
Yeah.
Instead, they've just been focusing on the sky islands, a bit of underground, mostly in that first teaser. I think that's why, even as excited as I am, it's like I'm still holding out for some more changes to be announced.
Yeah, some more
And
trailers.
I'm completely and if they do and they don't want to talk about it, I'm fine.
Because it'll be such a surprise on release day, won't it? No, pretty much no matter what, no matter your thoughts, it'll be so surprising to jump into the overworld and be like, "Yo, there's like a new village over there. What's that?"
Yeah. Gonna be eating good with the YouTube content
really
for a long time after. Related to that, how did you guys... I was a little upset, like not terribly upset, but I was a little upset at the reused riding horse music and stable music. I was really expecting a new soundtrack. Were either of you disappointed by the fact that the same music is going to be used?
I am in a spot where I'm I mean, I can kind of see where it's coming from. I'm hoping that it isn't like that isn't the same for everything in the overworld for sure. But I think the stable music and the riding music in particular are a couple of my favorite tracks, so it doesn't bother me nearly as much as it probably should. But I think,
the
dude, I love the riding music so much, though. Oh, I will randomly play that just I don't know, at like midnight when I'm trying to edit. I'll play that.
It's good to have it in videos too as
such
background music.
just so offbeat and just nice, especially for a casual video.
I mostly care about the hard hitting tracks, you know. For me, the music that sticks out isn't like really the subtle stuff. Aside from like one of my favorite themes I always use in my videos is the Blessing Shrine theme. I love that. But it's music like Attack on Varuta, Hyrule Castle, the final trial of the DLC, which I love that final phase with everything just all those instruments just kicking in.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, Va Meadows theme. It's just I want to see more of those. I usually don't really pay attention to the stuff like the horse riding. So, you know, if it's there again, I wouldn't really have a strong opinion of it. It's just I want to see more of those hard-hitting music because in a way, because Breath of the Wild has a lot of like I like to call it like ambience music, you know, because it's just kind of there to set a bit of a more calming mood until the Guardian piano music kicks up. But by having that calmness, it makes that part where all of a sudden you hear the piano theme hit much harder.
That contrast is crazy sometimes.
And my favorite themes are always those ones that are like full on soundtrack. So it could reuse a lot of those, you know, simple themes such as Cold Mountain, you know, even like the Sheikah Tower theme. Those could be in it and I'd be fine so long as we have those moments like Attack on Varuta.
Right. You know, for me, I think I will be okay with it. I will not even complain in any videos past this point unless they don't change the shrine music. If they give me another 120 shrines with the same song. I like the shrine song, don't get me wrong, it's a good song, but I am not listening to that shit for another 120 shrines. I won't do it. I won't.
I highly doubt they're gonna have the same theme, especially since I feel like you'd also have to assume that it would have the same aesthetic.
Yeah.
but it makes no sense.
Yeah, it would have to be.
When you like from a lore standpoint, it makes no sense because the shrines were built by the Sheikah, and they look like Sheikah technology. We haven't seen Sheikah technology aside from the only thing we've ever seen that ties back to the Sheikah is Link that's in that room with the guardian legs. That's like the only thing we've ever seen.
I still don't know what that room is about, but I still don't know what's going on there.
Some people think it's in one of those towers. Because I believe you can see just faintly the outside of some open bits, but it's kind of hard to tell. Another thing that supports that is where he's standing. The Sheikah script says transport, and that's what it says at every teleportable location.
Okay.
For Breath of the Wild.
Okay.
Even in the Divine Beasts where you enter, it has a circular pad with teleport in Sheikah script. The shrines. So there's a good chance it's in one of those towers, which also wouldn't mean that the towers would probably be teleported to.
Yeah, I'm sure that the shrines, if they exist, are going to look Zonai and not like Sheikah. They're not going to have a Sheikah aesthetic. But if they do that and then they're too lazy to also change the theme song, I'll lose it. You'll see. You'll see videos from me. You'll see.
that would definitely be a flaw. I do not see that happening.
Yeah.
Though.
Yeah.
I do not see it happening.
I've got no evidence, but I agree.
Okay. We got to wrap this up. We're getting close to... I'm mindful of your guys' time. So let me just ask you just a few more things. $70 for a Switch game. What do you think on that?
Can I chime up? Because I'm from the UK...
Go ahead.
It's always been 60 Great British pounds for us since Breath of the Wild came out. And it's not changed for this either. So I have absolutely zero. It sounds like I'm about to say I've got absolutely zero sympathy, but that's not true. I have absolutely zero. I've not got a horse in this race, is what I'm trying to say.
Right. NintendoBlackCrisis?
Oh boy. Good you brought that up because in Canada, with tax, I'm pretty sure this is going to be a game that's going to cost over $100.
So, like with the conversion, it'll be $100 American dollars in Canada?
No.
It'll be $100 Canadian dollars.
It'll be 100 Canadian.
Isn't your currency better than ours right now?
I have no idea. All I know is I see the extra digit on the price and I'm like, oh. So
that's a lot of money.
It is. The problem it's not just like the problem with here's like when other game companies see like the price has been slowly going up, it's just gonna keep going up. And yeah, it might feel like it's worth the money. I mean, for a content creator, it'd be definitely, you get that money back after making videos, but it's still a lot of money.
As an early buy-in, that is a lot of money.
I'm sure technically there's going to be enough in it where you'll feel justified, but that might also just be you trying to cope with the amount that you spent. So I don't know. I don't really like talking about it much.
Just remind you.
So like,
because no, I like how because I know I'm gonna buy it still.
Right.
So I feel like there's no point in talking about it.
Let me ask you a question. Did you scramble for the collector's edition?
I wanted to. I couldn't get it. That's the one thing I still want to get.
Because it's what about the OLED? Are you thinking about getting the Switch OLED, the controller, or the little carrying case?
Oh, I have 2 Switches pre-ordered. One is backup. because so I've seen online that actually they've been really good. A lot of them have consistently been in stock. It's not like in 10 minutes they're gone. They've been like up. The Best Buy US, it was up for like hours and hours. Mm-hmm. Now, unfortunately, one of the reasons why I haven't been able to get my analysis video of the recent gameplay stuff up is because I just waited for the Canada pre-orders to drop. Yes, and it took 24 hours, and I was that's why I didn't want to work on any videos, keep myself available. And then of all times, when Walmart comes up with they were the first ones to have pre-orders, and I was making goddamn pancakes. And unlike the Best Buy one, I saw the tweet 10 minutes later. Two people were nice enough to DM me because I asked for some people to let me know.
Yeah.
But I saw comments saying after just 2 or 3 minutes it was sold out, and I was thinking like, Walmart, are you kidding? I was I was so annoyed. But then they came in clutch because like 25 minutes or 30 minutes later they had a restock for it. So I ran up, I pre-ordered it, and then I a bit later on Best Buy's went up, and I knew Best Buy from the US one, they would be a lot more reliable. So I made sure to pre-order one from them just in case, because I had heard stories that sometimes the people will cancel a pre-order, and I heard especially with Walmart they're pretty bad with that. So I've got no cancellation orders, so I need to just hold on to those two and remember to cancel one, or I'm gonna have to go I mean, if that happens, I'll probably just like do a giveaway or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was also able to get the controller from Best Buy. So at this point, I'm hoping I can get lucky enough for Collector's Edition. Collector's Edition seems to be the hardest thing to get.
Yeah, I'm so glad I got it.
Everything else is
me and Adam, we would like, there's this pretty local like UK site
Wow.
that I knew about, and I was like, Adam, trust me, this place will have it. And we were literally just sat there refreshing the entire day after after that trailer. It was great.
Oh man, yeah. So I still need to hopefully get my hands on that. Regardless, though, it doesn't matter if I have to wait a bit longer, because like a lot of other people, I'll be getting a digital version so I can play it like immediately when it drops.
Oh my god! See, here's the thing. It's like a lot of people. I have no problem paying the $70. Like, well, I'm paying $50 because I'm using a Nintendo voucher thing. But like, I have no problem with that. But it's weird because a lot of people like you just did, there's like, oh, I don't know, I don't like these increased prices and all that stuff. But then they're like, I'm buying the collector's edition, I'm buying the Switch.
Yeah,
OLED.
Exactly. So I really can't say anything about the price increase. I pre-ordered 2 of the Switches, and they don't even come with the game.
I had MHK.
Like, I'm the last person to talk.
I had MHK on the podcast as well, and he's like, yeah, these price increases, and I'm like, well, you're getting the collector's edition, aren't you? He's like, hell yeah, I'm getting the collector's edition.
Oh, man.
I love
Yeah.
it. So yeah, look, okay. So the argument seems to be, look, it's a Nintendo Switch game, and that specific argument doesn't make any sense.
To be honest, I absolutely
Go ahead.
hate the argument because, man, Nintendo just drop banger after banger a lot of the time. Unless we're talking about a Mario sports game, but that's like a completely different conversation. And even then, there are some cases where it's pretty damn good. But I think, just in my opinion anyway, because I know obviously there's a lot of opinions because video games are just subjective, but I think Nintendo drops the most quality out of all of the first-party developers, at least. Sony's pretty close. I don't want to talk on Microsoft. But yeah.
I think Nintendo clearly drops the best out of Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo. Out of those three, yeah, Nintendo pulls ahead by a lot.
I think it's just especially because the Switch is portable. That's something that I feel like a lot of people seem to forget nowadays. The Switch is portable, and the games work insanely well portably a lot of the time, despite having to accommodate for that.
Yeah.
And I think, the fact that Tears of the Kingdom as well, we'll bring it back to that, but Tears of the Kingdom, the fact that that game has been made specifically for the Switch instead of also for the Wii U, like Breath of the Wild was, so far anyway.
You think it'll be much better optimized?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Right, that's true. If Nintendo games actually had better sales, I don't think it would be as big of an issue, because these other games, obviously, like they're not $70. They're still expensive though. But it's like, oh, okay, so games are expensive these days, but I can just wait for a sale. And for these other companies, you can get these games later on for like half off.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Nintendo's like,
that is
best
true.
deal ever, 10% off, Tears of the Kingdom.
I think
and they like selling that same Nintendo Switch Mario Kart 8 Deluxe bundle. Please give us a different bundle with a different game.
I had that Tears of the Kingdom. I'm sorry, Breath of the Wild game, because I played it on Wii U way back when, And so I had it on my Switch wish listed for a long time, and it never went on sale. I kept looking for it, just never, no price reduction. I'm like, you're seriously gonna make me pay $60 like today? And finally, it went on sale a little bit ago, for Tears of the Kingdom. It's like, oh great, now I can actually fucking buy it.
That was funny.
But it's like, okay, look, I stand in a weird place. I'm a Nintendo Switch defender. I've defended Nintendo Switch for a long time. I talk about the portability aspect of it. I like my Nintendo Switch. It produces miracles considering, how small this little hardware is. I am also getting sick of it. Like, I'm also getting sick of I don't want a lot out of my video games. I really do. I am not a graphics person. I don't need intensive graphics. I don't need anything else. I'm a simple man. But I think that in today's age, I would just like Nintendo to produce a console that can play a stable 60 frames per second and has consistent, 1080p. I don't need more P's than that. I just want 1080p's.
It's mostly for the Switch. It is mostly about like performance, but it's funny because they always have to have these like gimmicks with the consoles. But it's like, if you guys just sat down and made a console that its focus was power, like Microsoft and Sony, that thing would be like so good. I'm shocked that it always, like, at this point, I feel like they have to, keep going with the Switch route where there has
that
to,
hybrid
like,
console.
Well, there has to, yeah, exactly. But given all the technological advancements, I'm sure we've seen the Steam Deck. Steam Deck's amazing.
Yeah.
You don't even have to have something that powerful if you want to like lower the price a bit. But with games like Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, it really shows how like the Switch needs an upgrade.
Why with that specifically?
Because Hyrule Warriors is supposed to be like 30 FPS.
Yeah.
Age of Calamity. It dips a lot.
It's not 30.
Okay. I've seen a lot of people defend it. I've even seen people say, "Oh, well, the frame dips kind of like, they add a bit of charm to it." It's like, no, it doesn't.
Oh my god.
It's just because that game has so many frame drops, and it's like, it's unlike Breath of the Wild, where it's like, okay, Korok Forest, that's one place.
Frame drops are not charming. I hate when people. Wait a minute. People are going to call me out. Except in the original Demon Souls, where Dragon God punches the pillars and it causes a big flame drop. Except there, that is extraordinarily. That's part of the intended experience.
Yeah, it's like an anime effect. There's a pause before the punch, then the impact.
Yeah, I had to dip that in the bud before people call me out. But apart from that, frame drops are bad.
Yeah, but it's Age of Calamity. It just I've always really disliked the performance.
I mean, it makes it easier to spam a button and then press Y though. So yeah.
Yeah, it gives you more time to think.
It really is a performance. Well, to what you said, NintendoBlackCrisis, I don't think Nintendo. I don't think they think it either. I don't think they can produce a power console to compete with Microsoft and Sony. I think the reason they make stuff like this is because their company's much smaller. They're just way smaller than Sony or Microsoft, and they don't think they can compete on that level. So they make something where they don't have to compete with them on that level and take advantage of a market space that they're not currently occupying.
But that's the thing. They don't have to reach that level.
Right.
They have the exclusive games. Right.
But it's got to be better than this. Like I'm at the point where I'm like, I love my Switch. I really do. I think they've worked wonders on it. They've optimized and like shaved away. They get some incredible things happening on this thing. But I'm tired. I need 60 frames per second on everything, and I need it. Just make something like a Steam Deck. Like, for the love of God, make something like a third, half as powerful as the Steam Deck. And when it's in dock mode, make it 1080. I don't even think Tears of the Kingdom is 1080p. I think it's like 900p or something.
It's hard to tell with how awful YouTube compression is.
Yeah.
I hate having like with the last trailer as well. It's like, this obviously is not how the game is supposed to look, and I'm sure people who are on that bandwagon of, oh, that Tears of the Kingdom DLC, they're probably gonna see it and be like, oh yeah, the game looks so awful. But it's like YouTube compression just sucks sometimes. That's why I really appreciate when we can get our hands on those like press screenshots.
Yes, they look a lot better.
Those look significantly better.
When do you think we're getting the Switch 2?
I was like 100% convinced that they were going to like release a Switch to like alongside like obviously the argument is, oh well, but then you need a new console to buy it. But I figured they would just like make Tears of the Kingdom run a bit better on a Switch 2 or something.
Right.
But obviously I that's not happening. I have no idea. The only thing they seem to have planned that's really big is Tears of the Kingdom plus Pikmin. Obviously it's a smaller fan base, but I don't think there's much else.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are speculating that maybe a Switch 2, like Tears of the Kingdom, kind of marks the end. It's gonna be that last big game we get.
Yeah, but it's still not looking like it's coming this year. Like I'm like, man, I think they're gonna milk it another year, or maybe even another after that.
Well, when you see the sales, I think stuff like Mario Kart's still selling so good.
Yeah.
Like that's why they have that godforsaken bundle constantly. Yeah, I mean, I have no idea. Nintendo, they love to just like, do things where it looks obvious, like it's going in one direction, and they just are like, no. Like in that first like half of the dry period for Breath of the Wild 2, they announced and released a quote unquote prequel to Breath of the Wild. Like they did all that. Wow. the like that's still hilarious. So I don't know.
Ooh, I don't know. I'm thinking probably end of the year, start of next year, to be honest. Yeah.
Really?
But the only thing that kind of gogoes against that,
That's soon,
the only thing that kind of goes against that is if Tears of the Kingdom has DLC. It's kind of a weird like
Right.
through line. But I also think it's been so long now without a Mario game, it would make for a perfect launch title, and then do like Mario Kart a few months later. And obviously the end of the Mario Kart DLC is coming at the end of this year, I think. yeah.
Or so you think.
so
I
you
wouldn't be
think.
surprised if they. I wouldn't be surprised if they release more.
If people keep buying it, they're gonna keep
True.
making it. They don't care.
Game's never gonna die. Like it's amazing because it is turning into like a Mario Kart Ultimate. And I love it's probably my top 10 games. I like more of the Wii U one because I was one of those quote unquote like competitive players with like time trials and stuff, and I loved the fire hopping mechanic and stuff. So when they removed those bits in Deluxe, I still really enjoy the game and I love it and I always play it. But sometimes I like to go back and play the Wii U one. But even with all those updates, I am looking forward to seeing, what Mario Kart 9 would look like.
9?
But,
you're going to get
I feel
Mario
like it's not
Kart
gonna die.
again released on the Switch 2 is what you're going to get.
Yeah, but also there is a point where when they have so much DLC and it's such a big game, it's like if we release Mario Kart 9, it'll feel like a downgrade. But yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Well, it's like this next Smash game, I wonder what they're going to do for that. Like, are they even going to do that?
Sakurai's had enough, man. Let him rest.
Yeah, I don't know.
Is Sakurai going to make it? Like, is he going to work on another Smash game? I think he might just not make it. I think he made his magnum opus on that, and he's like,
Man,
you know what? I
Duke it,
want to do
Chris.
something else.
Duke it,
I want to be free.
Uprising was so good. Yep, sorry.
Yeah, I didn't play that one, actually. Should I?
Play
Should I
Uprising
the Kid
for
Icarus
sure.
games?
Uprising was a great game, in my opinion. I've seen a lot of
Okay.
people that share the opinion there.
Okay. All right. So, last thing before we all head out. Do you think we're only going to get Breath of the Wild style Zelda games from now on? Is this just it going forward? Only Breath of the Wild type thing? Always open world? Do you think that we're not going to get any more 2D or 3D Zelda games?
I think we'll still get some 2D. I'm still holding out that they'll make like a Zelda Dungeon Maker, and all they have to do to make it realistic is just make it a top down. If it was 3D, it would just be way too complicated.
Yeah.
And when you say Breath of the Wild style, obviously you don't just mean like how it looks, right? It's just like
Not necessarily. No, I mean just open world, basically.
development cycles are probably going to start getting longer for these Zelda games, because I don't think they're, now that they've done this open world, I don't think they're just going to get rid of it. They need to some extent have a pretty good open world. I've always seen Breath of the Wild as like, I guess, a soft reboot of the Zelda series, especially when it comes to like the quote unquote timeline stuff. Now that we have a sequel to Breath of the Wild, I wonder if they're going to try and make this like a new timeline, focus a bit more on that. Or if they're, like you say, they're just going to kind of ignore that and move on to the next game. I guess it's also really hard to tell because my channel only kicked off after Breath of the Wild released.
Yeah.
So I haven't been around as long to see like any sort of patterns. Yeah, I don't know. I am curious. It is very interesting because as hyped as we are about Tears of the Kingdom, I'd be lying if I said that there were time that I hadn't at all thought of like, what's next? You know, like where are they gonna go after this?
I think one of the biggest things to think about, especially with like the future, is Aonuma. Aonuma's got to be getting. He's got to start thinking about like, I don't know if I want to keep doing this for much longer. I think there's a point where he's just like, well, I'll pass it off to someone who really cares, and then at that point, I think it could go any way. Personally speaking, I think with the Breath of the Wild style games, like NBC said, I think the development cycles are so long, so I could see more development teams. 2D games are a really weird thing at the minute. It's been so long without like an actual, like just normal 2D game.
What about
They'll probably try to like.
What about a Link
do
Between
remakes.
Worlds? Like that's in the 2D style, but it's not necessarily 2D.
Oh yeah,
but I would
count,
totally count it among
for sure.
the 2D
I
games.
count it.
Well, for those type of games, I just consider it like a top-down game.
Yeah,
you know, that's the best way to.
I think that would just be a crime, like to not have 2D or like. There's no reason why they can't have multiple development teams working on Zelda stuff. Like if it's going to take you 6 years at a time to make another open world Breath of the Wild style Zelda, if it's going to be this kind of development cycle for that, like start a new team and go make me some other games. Get me some 2D games. Get me some 3D games. Re-release the HD collections of
why have they
Twilight
not
Princess
done
and
that?
Wind Waker on the Switch already.
Why
haven't they not done it?
Why?
Yeah,
that's something that like we all know it's gonna happen, but it's like, why hasn't it happened?
The Switch is
this
dying.
is the end.
The Switch is old and desiccated. Where is it?
I mean, dude, it's crazy. The 3D, the linear. I hope they do just have a load of development teams. Just do top-down Zelda, linear Zelda, or linear 3D Zelda, and open world Zelda. That would make me more than happy. And Grezzo. Don't forget
please.
Grezzo. Grezzo are here. They're out there. They could make top-down games by themselves. They could make amazing top-down Zelda games. But I digress.
All right. Well, that's all I got for today. I got to get going soon. Thank you guys so much for coming.
Yeah, it's completely fine.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
It was really fun.
I don't get like the chance to do a lot of stuff like this, so yeah, thank you.
This has been the Yggdrasil podcast. Thank you all very much for listening.